Tuesdays. I am Kayon Vaz, founder of Hekaya Media, a digital storytelling company creating content for Caribbean entrepreneurs. And today I'm very excited because I have a young lady who I don't even know where to begin. But let's just start with the basics. She is the board co-chair and president of Youths for Excellence Limited, a nonprofit organization that she started at 17. And the organization is based in 5 countries: Jamaica, Guyana, Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, and of course, Guyana. And what the organization has been able to do is to assist thousands of children to receive textbooks, tablets, health checkups, travel passes, lunch passes, and resources for the children's parents. I'm speaking about none other than the recent, yes, she was awarded the Princess Diana Award. That is correct, Janine. I don't want to get that
That's
wrong.
correct.
I think it is so fitting that this was given to you because you embody everything that award stands for. Jenine, welcome to Digital Tuesdays. Thank you so much for pretty much sharing the time with us here on this platform.
Thank you so much, Ken, for having me on today. And to your listeners of this amazing podcast, thank you for giving me your ear. And yeah, I'm excited to be here.
All right, so let me just take it back to the beginning, because for you to start a nonprofit organization at 17, just in a few seconds, I hope you can just tell me, all right, where were you? When did the epiphany happen? And when you said, okay, this needed to be done?
I definitely say I was in the middle of studying for CAPE exams. And, a bunch of me and my friends, we decided that we wanted to do some volunteer work in the summer. But then we looked at it and we were like, okay, what's the best way to do this? And initially we decided that we're going to tutor some students in a classroom for the summer. But then I thought more about it because I tend to overthink things. And I realized that teaching in a classroom wasn't probably the best route, alone, because I was looking at the fact that me and my friends were all a bunch of high school students with no significant qualification in education compared to the teachers who were there for majority of the school year. So then I was thinking about what was the best way that we could have added value. And that made me look at the root causes that impact students, whether it was poor nutrition, them coming to school hungry in the mornings, they can't learn anything, or poor healthcare. Could be anything from, underlying illnesses to them not having their eyes checked. They won't know if they can see the board or not, or lack of access to school resources. That could be anything from textbooks, pens, pencils, notebooks for them to even take notes in, tablets for them to use to study from. So that was kind of what made us come up with the idea of a more holistic approach to education. And then we looked at, how would they get to and from school, bus passes. We looked at their families as well, because if you do any form of research on education, you realize that a wraparound support is highly endorsed, which is what we use our holistic model, in that we need to support their families too in order to truly elevate them. Because you can bombard a child with all these resources. It makes no sense if they go home and still see mom, if it's just a single mom household or a single dad household, or maybe both parents are struggling in the household. But you need to empower the parents as well to provide for them. So we try to give them opportunities for career and personal development, whether it's helping them with CXC subject costs or trying to provide them with some form of vocational training. We've reached out to YTEP in Trinidad, or Heart Trust NSCA in the case of Jamaica, for example. So that's kind of where that idea came from, and what the vision is.
Wow, that is amazing. You literally you think things through. And I think that in itself is always the first step. I know for many of us as entrepreneurs, we tend to go, yeah, we have this idea. And then we go, yeah, and then we're going to make a lot of money. But it's always the steps and the process that you really have to take into consideration before you reap the success. I just want to ask though, how did you make those linkages as it relates to tapping into the various countries or Caribbean countries in offering the assistance?
Definitely say young people. Young people, because even though I have a board that's packed with, former and current government officials and advisors from, some of the largest conglomerates in the Caribbean, it was really and truly young people who pushed this forward, because I actually connected with a couple youth leaders in these different countries who put me on to their government officials as well, because they were already working shoulder to shoulder with them. And a couple of these youth leaders, we actually made them ambassadors for the organization, and these ambassadors would oversee our branches for their countries. So it was actually young people who say run like the Caribbean Regional Youth Council, or have their own nonprofits in their countries and have done significant work there, that put us on to them. And obviously, networking is a major thing, just like in any other business. So that's kind of how we got there.
Right, that's really good. And I love the fact that you mentioned young people. How do you think the perception as it relates to volunteerism, as it relates to nonprofit organizations, it has changed over the years? Because when I was growing up, I didn't really see much, and that was many moons ago. I didn't really see a lot of young people at the helm of nonprofit organizations. Do you think there's a shift for the 21st century?
I definitely think so. I've been seeing a lot more young people lead nonprofits across the region, and youth leaders are actually being given more of a platform. I think where the shift actually became possible was probably recommendations by international organizations, whether it's the UN or other government bodies, that have said, look, we actually do need to include young people in these conversations. And from seeing that we were actually being listened to and being supported and being provided resources to continue our work, I think that's what motivated a lot of young people. Because even for me, speaking personally, governments across the region, because we recently held a project that reached 5,000 primary and secondary school students across 5 countries. And that was only possible because their ministries of education in Jamaica, Barbados, and Trinidad actually signed on to be a part of the project. And we collaborated with persons in Guyana and Grenada to reach their people. And then the Prime Minister of St. Vincent came on and was like our opening speaker. And then we had like the resident rep for the UNDP, the Northern Caribbean, Denise and Tony. She came on and supported through the UN. So I feel like those people were very keen in showing me that, hey, we see what you're trying to do and we're going to support it so that it can go further. And that's what has allowed the shift to happen. I think the shift has also happened, speaking personally, again, I studied abroad for 4 years. And that was what made me understand how nonprofits in the US operated. And I saw that it was possible, because growing up in Jamaica, you don't really see nonprofits being a full-time career. You see that being like a side hustle, which is what actually leads to a lot of grassroots organizations dying, because people don't see it as a viable career option. I was so set on being a neurosurgeon, I still am, but before I hadn't seriously considered running this nonprofit and continuing with it until I saw that, hey, these are mechanisms you could use. You can even start up a social enterprise. Like, my eyes were open when I got somewhere else and saw that it was done, because culturally here in Jamaica, running a nonprofit still isn't really much of a thing unless you're at some big established international org, like say the UN or the CDB, or something along those lines, like, or Food for the Poor, for example. That's like more of a non-governmental organization. But these are things that I definitely think are slowly changing as we have more, globalization, and people are becoming more exposed to different ideas around the world, and collaborations are more possible. So now I can see how somebody in India, this actually happened even with the Guyana Award. They reached out to me from India saying, hey, we want to bring YFE over here, right? And before, I would have had to fly to India to make that conversation happen. But we can discuss all of this over Zoom, and how it's been successful for them over here, what methods I can copy from them and bring it over to Jamaica to make it work. So these are all things that have been causing the shift, I would say, in terms of like our culture. There's still a long way to go, especially as it relates to access to funding. That's a major issue that we struggle with still, as well as most other nonprofits. But slowly but surely, the tides are changing.
And and thank you so much for sharing that, Janine. I think it's important that you were able to see the opportunities that are available in service to others, because culturally, we really want to hustle for that dollar. You know, we're not doing nothing for free. Um, we need food to eat. We have our families to feed, but really, when you serve others, it's really stepping out of yourself. Even if it's a little, you still have more than the other person that is out there. And I really think that's what your organization embodies. Which brings me to my next question. Through this journey that you were having, what surprised you the most in terms of discovering yourself? What is it that you said, wait a minute, I'm really changing, or I didn't know that I had this in me? Like, can you share with our listeners, like, moments of where you had that introspection and you said, all right, whoa, I've really grown, or I'm really tapping into something that is great?
I would definitely say that there were two moments for me, two big moments that made me realize. And I'd say the first moment was the very first project we had. It was our test run. Because, when you come up with a new model for anything, you want to see if it works. So we actually had a 3-week project across 3 different schools. It was Coburn Garden Primary, Franklintown Primary, and Pembroke Hall Primary. And what we did was that from Monday to Thursday, we'd be doing teaching. And then on Fridays is when we do comprehensive health checkups and give them school supplies for them to go back into the new school year. Because these projects, it took place in August. And for me, that project was so instrumental because, at 17, when it happened, we raised over $2.5 million for that project. JUTC came on and gave like over $600,000 to support taking kids to and from school, as well as our volunteers to the sites. Health checkup companies, they provided another $500,000 to provide health checkups for these students. And we had over 600 students show up for this event. So, that for me was monumental. And then having this one student who was deemed a troublemaker, or that, she wouldn't reach anywhere in academics, everybody else, the teachers and stuff like that, had given up on her. But then she came back to me, and in her own way, I'll never forget, she gave me one of them small sweet today. Mm-hmm. She came and said, you were one of the first persons who ever believed in me. And I actually saw her whole attitude change after that camp that we had at Coburn Gardens. And she actually became one of the best students after that. So that for me was what made me realize, okay, I'm onto something here. But I definitely say the second thing for me that stood out was actually our back to school event at the Prime Minister's office. I'm actually quite mad. That was what made me realize it, in that 3 days before the event was supposed to happen, it only became known to sponsors afterwards, was when we got confirmation that the event could take place there. Because I was emailing and calling and emailing and calling, and nobody was paying me any mind because we were so small at the time. And but I was set on the fact that I wanted it at the PM's office because it would have been a major inspiration for the students that we had. They're setting foot in the PM's office, they're having a back to school event there. Like, where else higher in the land could they have gone? So that for me was a powerful message, and it made me realize that I was insane, because I told sponsors it was taking place there, and 3 days out I still didn't know. And I remember even I showed up to the PM's office after they started screening my calls and my emails, and they actually had to throw me off the compound. And I was still determined to make it happen for the kids. I called around and I asked around, and then it finally got approved. They were like, good God, let this girl stop calling us. And for me, that was a big moment, because I realized that I was volunteering my time and I put myself in danger just to get a certain result for the kids. So that's what made me realize that I actually really love what I'm doing. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sticking my neck out like this.
No guts, no glory, no risks, no rewards. Paid off. You've been the recipient of the Prime Minister's Award, the Princess Diana Award. You've also been a part of the I Believe initiative as one of the ambassadors for that. With all these achievements and accomplishments, where do you see yourself? How further do you want to go?
I definitely want Youth for Excellence to be across the entire Caribbean, and maybe even spread to the rest of the world. We've been in talks with the US government to make that happen, and I've been talking with European governments as well once we move past the Caribbean. I want the Caribbean to, be eradicated of all forms of education inequity. I know that seems like an insurmountable task, but we gotta start somewhere. So that's where I'd want Youth for Excellence to be. In terms of my other nonprofit, JAYA, Jamaican American Youth Alliance, that serves the diaspora, I'd want to expand more of our arms into other Caribbean countries and create other diaspora organizations for them, because I truly believe that the diaspora is a powerful tool for national development of the entire region, to be honest, because we have, in terms of our regional GDP, I think that sits at around 8% of our regional GDP. In the case of Jamaica, 18% of our GDP. So it's really something for us to look into in terms of transference of skills and national development. So that's where I'd want to be in terms of the work that I do. Academically, I'm going to finish up my degree. I took time off school to really flesh out these initiatives that I had in mind. I have a semester left. So I'm going to finish up my majors in neuroscience and economics, pursue a master's maybe in public policy, something that can help to further the work that I'm already doing. And yeah, that's basically what I have in mind for the near future, and to work on some other entrepreneurship initiatives that I have, because I've always wanted to have a tech startup. So that's where I'm thinking, that's what I'm thinking of doing. And obviously coming back to Jamaica wherever I go, so I'll never be too far from this country.
Amazing, Jenine. You're such an inspiration. And just one last question before we end this episode for this podcast. For anyone who's listening who may have reservations or fear of starting their own nonprofit organization. They have the idea, but they don't have the resources. They don't have the connections. They don't have, what these, as you said before, what these large entities may have. What's your advice for them?
Honestly, just start. Because when I started 6 years ago, I didn't have them either. I told you a story of me literally getting thrown out of the Prime Minister's office. Okay, I had to build this up over 6 years. So it doesn't just come overnight. And for some people, it does. And, they just happen to have been privileged enough and fortunate for it to be that way. But I'll just say to you that, don't get discouraged just because it's not going exactly to plan. Every business, whether it's a for-profit company or even social entrepreneurship, it takes some time for you to build up that brand and reputation, and for people to trust in what you're doing and to see the impact. So I would say start where you're at, work with the people who actually want to work with you. If someone brushes you off, that just means that they're not for you at that moment in time. And it doesn't mean that you should have them up either. It probably means that they don't see the vision that you have, because oftentimes as founders, we struggle to understand that we are the best people to understand our own vision. It is not up to us to convey it in a way to get other people to support what it is that you're doing. And if they don't get it at that moment in time, it doesn't mean that they can't be a valuable ally to you in the future once they realize that, oh, this thing has actually been creating a lot of waves and doing a lot of impact and a lot of good. So I would say start where you're at and build where you're at, and continue to build and not be discouraged. It takes time. And when you feel low, you just have to remember why you started what you started. It's not about you, it's about the people that you're helping. So you need to remember that. Well, something I used to remind myself and my team reminds themselves is when you fail to do your job, other people continue to suffer. So use that as a tool to motivate yourself when you feel like giving up.
Wow. And that's pretty much where we end today's podcast. Such an inspiration. Jenine Shepherd, board co-chair and president of Youths for Excellence, Princess Diana awardee, Prime Minister's Youth awardee. Just great things ahead for you, Jenine, and I'm really excited as you pretty much build your own empire and staying so humble with it as well. Before you go though, you have to share with our listeners where we can find you, what's the website, social media handles, all of that.
Okay, so you can find Youths for Excellence on Instagram and Facebook by typing in at YOUTHSFOR Excellence. You can also find Jaya on Facebook and Instagram by typing at Jaya, JAYA.network. You can also go to our websites, www.youthforexcellence.org, www.jaya.network. If you want to get in touch with me personally, you can find my Instagram at Shepherd, at SHEPHERD, Jenine, JENINE, at Shepherd Jenine on Instagram, Facebook, Jenine A. Shepherd. You can also find me on Twitter at Jenine A. Shepherd. And my website is www.janineshepherd.com. You can send me some emails and questions through there, janine@janineshepherd.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being our guest today on Digital Tuesdays. And remember, folks, please remember to like and share and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and as well as follow Hekaya Media JA, where we highlight our Caribbean and our Caribbean entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs. Great things are happening here in the Caribbean, and we want to bring all those good things to you using this platform.